body cam is the first on scene. I want to see a small portion of that as it relates to our discussion over here. So can you cue that up for me?
Do you know which part you want there?
Yeah, right after they hit the stairs and right when they get to the apartment. Oh, I'm sorry. Ranger.
You ready, Judge?
Yes, I'm ready.
It's on her next thing, right?
Nothing is
Oh.
on yet.
You see there, you're on?
Yes.
You start again, Judge, I'm sorry.
What's fine? Up about 10 seconds.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I didn't even give any thought to the victim's family, the alleged victim's family being here. My recollection of what I had seen on, I'm not quite sure what state's exhibit that is,
States Exhibit 6.
is what I thought it was. And so, in response to your question, Mr. Rogers, as to whether or not the court will allow Ranger Armstrong to give his opinion as to where Mr. John was allegedly shot, the court will not allow that to be done because the court is not satisfied that there is sufficient evidence to demonstrate where his shoes were and that those shoes were never moved or contacted by persons attempting to give or to render aid to him immediately after this incident. Is there anything else?
Judge, if I request to make an offer of proof on all the
Yes.
opinions, I'd like to elicit from Ranger Armstrong for the record.
Yes.
Ranger Armstrong, in addition to the training and background that we've gone through, how many homicides or shootings have you investigated, either as the lead investigator or as the assistant investigator?
It would be between 50 to 100. I don't have a hard number. It's many.
And are you trained in the processing of crime scenes?
I am.
And what's your training in that?
It's our basic crime scene school that all rangers go through. It's a 3-week school put on by senior rangers from our actual crime scene team. And they are also certified from the National Forensics Academy out of Tennessee, which is a 10-week course.
And have you gone through shooting reconstruction school?
I have.
And describe that for the judge.
That is a week-long school that will show you the different characteristics, the different behaviors, and the different types of evidence that you will find from different types of shootings, from different types of guns, from different types of ammunition and calibers, and also the objects that those bullets strike or may go through to strike its final resting place. We are also trained during that course in establishing a approximate trajectory and flight path for those gunshots, and we also learn what gunshots are capable of doing and the methodology behind establishing those results when we do flight path trajectory and look at bullet strikes on different materials.
And does that include wound tracks and wound paths and the types of gunshot wounds to individuals and the reactions to those gunshots?
Yes, sir, to an extent.
With regard to, did you make conclusions as to where you believed the complaining witness was standing or was located in the apartment when he was shot?
Yes, I did.
And what was your conclusion?
Approximately in the video where you see the first officer come in, you see his sandals, I believe, right in that immediate area where his sandals are laying and the bottom of his feet are pointing. We believe that he was standing in that location when he was shot.
And is that 13 to 15 feet from the center of the entryway into the apartment?
Yes, it is.
And tell the judge what you based that opinion on.
I based that opinion on Ranger Michael Adcock used our Leica scanner, which is a laser device that is used to measure those trajectories. When measuring the bullet defect in the wall and tracing that trajectory back, it was at a certain angle or a certain degree that placed the second shot in that area that I just described where Mr. John was. Also, the first bullet was in the first gunshot was also in that approximate area when Ranger Adcock measured those trajectories.
And do you also take into account the totality of the evidence that you find at the scene, the location of blood, the location of the body on the body cams, the location of the casings, all the physical evidence?
Absolutely.
And the results of the autopsy?
Yes.
And based on that, your opinion is, and based on your training and experience, that the evidence and the LICA scan shows that supports your opinion that Mr. John, the complaining witness, was standing 13 to 15 feet from the doorway when he was shot?
Yes, that's correct.
With regard to your training and experience, have you responded to numerous calls, burglary calls, domestic violence calls, all kinds of calls as a trooper or even as a ranger?
Yes, I have.
Based on your investigation, do you believe that Amber Guyger was responding to a burglary call when she acted, when she pulled her firearm and, or when she entered that apartment? When she entered 1478, was Amber Guyger responding to a burglary call?
Yes, I believe that was her perception.
Well, prior to getting there, did she have any idea, based on the evidence, was she aware that there was an intruder or what she believed to be someone in 1478?
Based on the door being ajar?
When she opened the door,
Yes.
she believed she was dealing with an intruder. Is that your belief?
Yes, it is.
Is that different than responding to a burglary call when you are called and you have a time to formulate a plan on the way to the scene?
Yes.
In other words, when you get dispatched to a burglary call, it's different than walking into a burglary in progress, correct?
Yes, correct.
And so would you expect her reactions to have to be more immediate than you would when you have time to formulate a plan?
Yes.
And, would it be reasonable for her to address the immediate, what she perceived as the immediate threat in that apartment at that time?
Yes.
In your opinion, did she have the luxury of time to call for cover or find concealment?
No, sir.
Ranger Armstrong, you've been in SWAT, you've been a ranger, you've investigated numerous officer-involved shootings. Can you describe, based on your training and your experience, your personal experience as well, and your investigative experience, what physical sensations you're experiencing and you've seen other officers experience when involved in a tense, rapidly evolving encounter with the suspect?
Based on my training and my experience, physically, your heart rate goes very, very high. Your vision becomes narrowed, which is commonly referred to as tunnel vision. You begin to think very, very quickly, and because your vision is narrowing, you begin to concentrate on what you believe your threat is. You narrowly concentrate on that threat. And that's due to blood rushing to the major organs of the body because your body's saying that I need to do this right now, which is either fight or flight.
And is that that's based on the the schools you've gone to, as well as your personal experience, as well as interviewing officers that have been in these same situations?
Yes, sir.
Ranger Armstrong, based on your the crime scene and your full investigation, did you have any evidence that the complaining witness was sitting on the couch when he was shot?
No, sir, I do not.
After completing the investigation, and now there was an arrest warrant on September 9th, I believe, correct, for manslaughter?
That's correct.
Had you finished your investigation at that time?
No, sir, I had not.
After finishing your investigation and looking at the totality of the circumstances and considering everything, do you believe today that you have probable cause to believe that Amber Guyger committed a crime?
Based on the totality of the circumstances, based on the complete investigation, no, sir.
Do you have an opinion as to whether it was reasonable for Amber Guyger to have believed she was in her apartment when she encountered the complaining witness?
Yes, I do.
And what is that opinion?
That she believed that there was a burglar in her apartment.
And that it was reasonable?
Yes.
And do you have an opinion as to whether it was reasonable for Amber Guyger to perceive, based on the facts and circumstances, that from her standpoint, that the complaining witness was an intruder in her apartment?
Yes, sir.
And what is your opinion?
That it was a reasonable perception.
And do you have an opinion as to whether it was reasonable, based on the facts and circumstances, from an ordinary, prudent person in Amber Guyger's position, for her to perceive that Botham Jean was a deadly threat?
Yes, sir.
And what is that opinion?
I believe that she did perceive him as a deadly threat.
And you believe that was reasonable based on your training and your experience and your consideration of the totality of the circumstances?
Yes, sir.
As an investigator, that's what you have to do. You have to look at the entire full picture of evidence when you're making a decision not only whether to arrest someone or whether to send them to prison, correct?
That's correct.
And today you're telling us that based on everything and based on your training and experience, you don't believe there's even probable cause that Amber Guyger committed any crime, correct?
That's correct.
And do you have an opinion as to whether Amber Guyger was reckless or criminally negligent when she parked on the 4th floor, when she walked to apartment 1478, when she entered apartment 1478, and when she encountered the complaining witness, perceived him as a deadly threat, and shot him?
No, I don't believe that it was reckless or criminally negligent based on the totality of the investigation and the circumstances and facts.
And Judge, those are the opinions that I would proffer for Ranger Armstrong.
I'm assuming Mr. Hermich would like to put your objections on the record.
Yes, ma'am, I do. I'd like to, I would object. First and foremost, I think it's inappropriate even for a qualified expert to be testifying as to what they believe the state of mind of the defendant was at the time of the commission of the offense. That's number one. Even a qualified expert isn't allowed to do that in the state of Texas. Secondarily, what Ranger Armstrong believes is Ranger Armstrong's opinion. That's his belief. His opinion and belief doesn't help the jury, which is exactly why an expert opinion on some things might be relevant. The fact that he believes something based on evidence doesn't mean that the jury is going to believe the same thing. And all it would do, since he can't help them, his opinion doesn't help them form their opinion, all it would do is serve to confuse them and possibly even override their individual assessment as the exclusive judges of the facts and the evidence because of his station as a Texas Ranger. So I believe that it's inappropriate not only because it violates him trying to tell the jury what she believed, but also, even if it was just what he believed, he's not helpful to the jury, and therefore they don't need that level of any expertise on what Ranger Armstrong believes. So I believe it's inappropriate.
Of course, go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Judge, just briefly, he's not testifying to her state of mind, he's testifying as to his opinion of the reasonableness of her actions. And Mr. Hermes is putting that into play by implying that she acted not in accordance with DPD policy in responding to a burglary call, that she ignored all these cues that she should have seen, and that she, and specifically putting into evidence that, telling this jury that the complaining witness was sitting on his couch when he was shot. He's made all these viable issues, and they rely on Ranger Armstrong and other law enforcement officers for these opinions and all their other cases, and detectives and investigators have been allowed to testify, if they're qualified, to their opinion as to reasonableness, pursuant to Rule 704, based on their training and their experience. And so, Judge, and then I'd like to carve out, I threw in the questions about his experience with tunnel vision. I'd like to carve that out as well, because I don't want that lumped in with all the opinion onto the reasonableness. So there's
Help me to understand what you mean by carving it out.
Well, so I'd like to offer the opinions and testimony that Ranger Armstrong, that I listed from Ranger Armstrong regarding, based on his training, his experience individually in interviewing officers and going to schools, of what an officer, what he experienced and what he's seen officers experience when they're confronted with a tense, rapidly evolving encounter with the suspect. And that's where he talked about what you go through and how you have the narrowing of the vision. And then I have the issue with whether the difference between responding to a burglary call and walking to a burglary, and then, so those are two different issues, and then all the opinions with regard to where the complaining witness was located and the reasonableness of Ms. Guyger's.
Was Ranger Armstrong proffered by you to the state as an expert in these areas?
He's on my list of experts, Judge.
No, that's not what she asked. She asked the opposite.
Well, I didn't.
We've never designated Ranger Armstrong as an expert.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood, Judge. The question I answered was, we proffered him as an expert. They did not. I'm sorry.
Well, my ruling remains the same. I will not allow Ranger Armstrong to testify as to the location of Mr. Donald when he was shot. I will not allow him to offer testimony concerning the reasonableness of Ms. Guyger's actions. And I will not allow him to testify concerning how he knows for certain where Mr. John was when he was shot. Because I think based on all the evidence that we have, I don't know that that determination can be made. There are a number of people in that crime scene. I looked back because my recollection was that there were people standing between his legs at one point in time offering aid to him. So I don't know if we can rely on the photographs that show where his flip-flops were to indicate exactly where he was at the time that he was struck by the bullet. Nor do I believe that we can determine from the trajectory of the bullet in the wall which bullet was fired first or second. So I'm not going to allow that testimony. Are we ready to proceed?
I am, Judge.
Judge, just with the television, am I allowed to
He's
go?
not on the stand right now as an expert. I guess we could go through qualifying. Is he on your witness list as a witness?
He's on my witness list, expert witness list.
Your Honor, if
We gotta have a 705 hearing. If we were gonna do all that, we should have had that before we got started. We're gonna finish this cross, and you can do with your case what you will when we get to your part of the case. Mr. Rogers, you may continue your cross-examination.
Armstrong, I want to show you State's Exhibit 140. And in I don't know what caused that, but
the erase.
here. These cones, if you can mark and show the cones 1 and 2, what do those reflect?
Each of these reflects a shell casing.
And describe to the members of the jury what a shell casing is and how it's relevant to an investigation.
The shell casing is what holds the gunpowder, which is the propellant for the projectile, which is the rounded nose that you see coming from a bullet. And a shell casing is ejected from a semi-automatic weapon every time the trigger is pulled, as long as it's functioning reliably. Depending on the make and model of the gun, depending on the ammunition, it will eject in a certain pattern, and that's basically it.
And those casings, are they very light? Like the bullet gets ejected out of them, and it gets ejected from the gun. Where they're on the ground on State's Exhibit 1 and 2, does that necessarily mean that's exactly where they fell?
No, not at all.
And tell the jurors what are some variables that can affect where you find casings and based on your training and your experience.
There are a lot of conditions that will factor into where a shell casing lands. First of all, the surface that it lands on, whether it's hard, soft, wet. Also, what it hits when it lands. It can also hit the actual person that shot the gun, and it can take a different path from its initial path. They can also be stepped on at crime scenes, or if it's on the street, they can be run over or stepped on and caught in the lugs of a boot or the tread of a tire. There's a lot of different variables that exist when a shell casing is ejected that will affect its final resting place.
And based on the body cam footage, just preservation of life always comes first. There was officers and paramedics walking in and around that area that could have affected the location of the casings.
Yes, that's correct.
Around 62 is my last.
Yes, sir.
I want to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 63 and 64. And I know you didn't take these photos, and it was actually the DAs that took these photos, but does that look like the key fob?
Judge, I'll stipulate, and I have no objection.
All right.
62 and 64?
63 and 64.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they're both in a minute.
So this is apartment 1478. Does that show how high the key fob is based on the measurements taken?
Yes, it does.
And what is that?
Looks like 3 feet, 7 inches tall.
So for the math impaired, 42 to 43 inches?
Correct.
And that's been 63, and around this location here is where the key fob is placed, correct?
That's correct.
Q. States Exhibit 98. And States Exhibit 98, does that appear to be the keys of Amber Guyger as they were placed in the locking mechanism of 1478?
Yes, it does.
Ranger Armstrong, based on your investigation and was it consistent that these shots happened in quick succession?
Yes, sir.
Based on ear witnesses and the descriptions of what they heard, correct?
That's correct.
I'll pass the witness.
I have nothing else. Thank you, Judge.
May be excused.
No objection from the state.
Judge, we're going to possibly recall, so subject to recall.
Ranger, please make yourself available.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state of Texas calls Christin Noebel.
Right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please make yourself comfortable.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Good morning, Ms. Noebel.
Good morning.
While I'm getting a couple of photographs, would you please state and spell your name for the court's report?
Christin Noebel, Christin, excuse me, Noebel, Noebel.
Ms. Noebel, please tell the jury how you're employed.
I'm employed with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office.
How long have you been with the Dallas County DA's office?
13 years.
Okay, and so you and I both work for the same individual, the district attorney. I'm not your supervisor, though, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. You also have a level of expertise for which I don't have. Give the many, actually. Would you please let the jury know kind of what your training and experience is?
My current role with the DA's office is I'm their digital multimedia analyst. I'm certified in video forensics through the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association. I've been an analyst for 3 years, and prior to that, I was a technician since 2011. I was also the graphics specialist for the District Attorney's Office, in which I handled the exhibits for the court, and then prior to that, I was the information systems coordinator, which all fall in the technology division within the district attorney's office.
I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic?
Yes. I want to look it down.
Okay? All right, good deal. So the very first thing I'd like to talk to you about is, as part of the investigation into the defendant's shooting, did you go out to the Southside Flats at some point close in time to the event and do an audit of their digital recording equipment?
I did, yes.
Okay, can you tell me, or can you tell them what we asked you to do?
There was a digital video recorder, a DVR, at Southside Flats Apartments, and I went and retrieved the video from that digital recorder and also made any notes of the time of the DVR, because some of y'all may not remember VCRs, but like your microwave or your oven, they're manually set, and sometimes the time can be off, so we like to take into account things like that to make sure we can account for any time discrepancies. We make sure that we have all the cameras, or make any notes if any of the cameras weren't functioning or had, like if there was a fog or a crack in the lens or something. We like to just go in and make an evaluation of the system at the time.
Okay. And just in kind of in layman's terms, as you know, I need stuff to explain to me. You could have an alarm clock next to your bed, right? Mm-hmm. And that alarm clock, if you have to manually program it, it may not actually keep the exact time, and over time it may get off. Does it get off on the time, right?
I don't know if it gets off on the time, but if it's set incorrectly initially, it will maintain an incorrect time.
Right. So is there a process in place where you can actually take a look at the time on an electronic device and compare it to a known time and ascertain whether or not the time being displayed is accurate or not?
That's correct. That's what we did here. I used my cell phone as the known time to document the offset and the time of the DVRs.
And why would you have faith in your cell phone time?
It is, it's not that I have faith in it, it's just, it's a known time. So that if I need to know how that time was, how it was created, I could go back to Verizon, who was the cellular provider, and find out how they set their servers to set the time. So because it's a known time, I can trace it back to how they set their servers.
And, Your Honor, I'd like to republish State's Exhibit 258.
Certainly.
So I'm showing you what's already in evidence, because I'm not going to reduce the lighting. As part of the DVR, the recording system that exists at Southside Flats, they actually have a timestamp that is embedded into the software that imprints upon the digital recording. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So 2150 in 12 seconds would indicate 9:50 p.m. with 12 seconds into that current minute. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I wanted you to find out whether or not those times, as they're imprinted on the surveillance videos, were accurate with the known time.
Correct.
What was your determination?
Initially, just based off of the cell phone did not go into how many seconds into a minute was. So for example, if it said it was 1:13 in the afternoon, I didn't know if it was 1:13 and 1 second or 1:13 and 59 seconds. So initially, the note was a 4-minute discrepancy.
Okay. And what were you able to actually narrow that down to?
We have other video from the 7-Eleven that was next door, which it was accurate up into 1 second. And so I could see just the edge of the apartments at one point. So a known event, I could see a car pulling, and then this entryway, I could see that car turn. So because I could see the edge of it, I don't know exactly what the seconds were that it was off, but we were able to narrow it down to approximately 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
All right. So based on your analysis, when the timestamp says on any of these videos, for example, let's just use this one, where it says 9:50, you really need to add 3 minutes and 20 seconds to it.
Yes.
So the real time is going to be 9:53 with some of that with 30 seconds.
32 seconds, yes.
Okay. And is that going to be, because the jury has now a number of these photographs showing cars not only going through the carport area, but also going into the garage parking lot. Mm-hmm. All of those timestamps, to be accurate, need to have 3 minutes and 20 seconds added to it.
And approximately accurate. We could be off by 1 or 2 seconds, but yes.
Okay. So this car, and I will, for purposes of the record, this has been identified as Mr. Jones's car, a chemistry teacher and a coach. He would have pulled in at about 21:53, 9:53, almost 9:54 p.m.
9:53 and 32 seconds.
Great. Okay. I also would like to show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibits number 286 and 287. Are these going to be records that you requested that were obtained by way of a subpoena through the Dallas Police Department concerning the automatic vehicle locator that's attached to Dallas police cars? State's Exhibit 286. This is the CAT records.
Yes.
Okay. So did you identify certain cars that were relevant? When I say cars, I mean elements. DPD assigns elements, right, to their officers when they're out in the field so that they could be tracked with GPS and so forth.
That's correct.
All right. And did you identify certain elements like that of Amber Guyger, Martin Rivera, Bruce Hellengard, the CRT team for the day of September the 6th, 2018?
We did, yes.
And did you receive that automatic vehicle locator data?
I did.
All right, and is that currently under a business records affidavit attesting to it and notice to the defense on September the 5th, 2019?
Yes.
And is this how you received it?
Yes.
I offer State's Exhibit 286.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Now I'm showing you what's marked for identification of State's Exhibit number 287. Is this going to be what is commonly referred to as a computer-aided dispatch or an incident detail report, which identified the unique Dallas Police Department element numbers, including, like, for example, Martin Rivera and the CRT team, as it existed on September the 6th, 2018?
It identifies their units and the persons in it.
Okay. I offer State's Exhibit number 287, also in the business records affidavit, notice to Mr. Rogers on September 5th, 2019.
No objection.
That is admitted as well.
All right. Ms. Noble, there was a lot of data, including what was just admitted, as well as the metadata for the body-worn cameras, 7-Eleven video that you testified to, and a whole host of other sets of data that you wanted in order to form a timeline for September the 6th, 2018, so that it's accurate. Is that correct?
As accurate as we could get it, yes.
Okay. And can you give, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just do this. Did you compile all of that data and then cross-reference it with each other to come up with what you believe to be a reliable timeline of Mr. John and Defendant Guyger on September the 6th, 2018?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification. That State's Exhibit 284, page 1, 2, and 3. They're right there. Are those going to? Is that going to be a fair and accurate depiction of the timeline that you've created from the data that you received?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to offer State's Exhibit number 284 for all purposes. Page 1, 2, and 3.
Judge, may we approach?
Sure.
The earlier objections, as stated on the record in the hearing and the motion of limine regarding the substance of the test evidence.
Okay. And those objections will be overruled and State's 284 will be admitted.
All right. Ms. Noble, I'm showing you now what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 284, D as in David. Can you look at that CD and make sure it still contains your initials? And can you confirm that that is a CD that you created for me, which contains State's Exhibit 284, but in a digital format with all of the underlying work product data supporting the information. In other words, not just the event, but all of the data supporting it.
That's correct.
I offer State's Exhibit number 284D for record.
No objection for record.
It's admitted for record purposes.
All right, lastly, with respect to 284, the three pieces of paper that I just showed you, you can stay there. That's not 284A, 284B, and 284C, are those going to be exact copies of 284, except that we've blown them up so that the jury could follow along with you in addition to the TV screens?
They are.
All right, so I'll offer 284A, B, and C.
Mr. Rogers, I presume you have the same objection?
Same objection, Judge.
Okay. Those are overruled, the name will be permitted. Is this for demonstrative purposes or all purposes?
Judge, I'm going to go ahead and offer it for all purposes in case it's needed during deliberation.
Same objection, Judge.
Same rulings?
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right. Everybody see that? Can you see that over there? All right. All right, Ms. Noble, do you have the clicker?
I do.
All right. Would you go ahead and take me and the jury through the data compilation showing the events of Mr. John and the defendant on September 6, 2018 from the various data points that you've received? If the defense has an objection as to where the particular source is from, of course, we'll let them regard you on that, and you can give them an answer, okay?
Okay, do you want me to go to that source or wait until, or if?
We'll wait and see if they have a question.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so go ahead and just begin, and I'll be up here to change boards when the time comes.
And I can barely see that from here, so I'll look here. Sorry, guys. At 7:23, we have a record that the defendant leaves his home, his apartment 1478.
Okay? And what's the next relevant point on the timeline?
Excuse me, but you mentioned the defendant leaves his apartment.
That's correct.
The defendant is Ms. Guyger.
I apologize. Defendant leaves her apartment, 1378.
Okay?
At 7:47, the defendant undocks her body camera at the Southeast substation.
Okay?
At 8 a.m., the defendant starts her shift at the Southeast substation.
Okay?
At 8:15 and 8:16, we have Botham Jean's car starts at 8:15, and at 8:16, we have a door event at his apartment, 1478.
And just for illustrative purposes, is in this particular timeline rendition, have you indicated the defendant's events in blue and the complainant's events in green?
That's correct. And any other outside stuff will be illustrated in orange.
Okay?
At 8:57, we have Botham Jean's car arriving at his destination. From 12 to 1:14, the defendant is at the central station for briefing. From approximately 1:22 to 2:07, the defendant is at a scene.
Okay?
At 2:11, the defendant is en route to DPD's headquarters.
All right, let me interrupt you real quick. When you were looking at the AVL, the automatic vehicle locator data, as well as the cell phone GPS data, all of which is in evidence, is that how you were able to confirm the location out at the scene and at Central Station?
From the vehicle records of the DPD squad cars, that's correct.
Okay, and when you say at the scene, is that going to be at the scene where the SWAT operation occurred and the CRT units were aiding them at a perimeter post?
Yes,
Okay, I understand. So until 2:11, well, basically from about 1:22 until 2:07, the defendant and the CRT team were out at that particular perimeter location.
yes, the GPS points that we have them at the scene.
Okay,
From 2:21 to 7:33 p.m., the defendant was at DPD headquarters.
okay,
During this time, at 8:56, Botham Jean's car arrives home, and at 5:02, Botham Jean has a door event at his apartment, 1478.
all right, let me interrupt. You said 8:56, but for Mr. Jean,
Oh, I apologize.
that's okay. So at 4:56 p.m., his car data indicates that there was a car event arriving at home.
His car arrives to Southside Flats, yes.
Okay. And at 5:02, a door event to his particular door showing a lock or an unlock. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and that's going to be during that block of time when the defendant is at DPD for whatever purposes she was at DPD.
Yes.
And you indicated also below, though, there was an arrow showing at 2:54 p.m. that there was an event involving the defendant. What was that?
At 2:54, the defendant sends a Snapchat to her partner, Martin Rivera.
Okay, were we able to ascertain the Snapchat, does that usually send an image?
It can.
Okay, and do those images erase themselves as part of the application program?
It should.
Okay, do we know what that image was?
We don't. We did not receive that image.
Okay. All right, what happened next?
Between 5:55 and 6:12, defendant and Martin send multiple texts and MMS to each other.
Okay, so text, I'm familiar with what a text is. What is an MMS?
Multimedia message, and that's if you send a picture, or in this case, if there are multiple persons in a group text, then it will be an MMS. It can just be text, it doesn't have to be a picture if there are multiple persons in that group.
But if it involves just one person, is that indicative of an image?
Yes.
Okay, so those transactions for which MMS messages are indicated on the phone data, just between the defendant and Martin Rivera, is going to be indicative of images.
Yes.
Were we able to recover any of those images?
No.
All right. I will just ask you this, are you aware of our efforts to obtain or try and recover those images?
I am aware of the processes that we sought out to obtain those.
Okay. All right, what happened next?
From 7:39 to 9:03, we have the defendant at the jail, which is Lou Sterrett Jail here in Dallas.
Okay. So I guess, you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically, just as far as we are right now, where it looks like we're through about 9 o'clock in the evening on September the 6th, does the data indicate that the defendant is either at DPD headquarters or the Dallas County Jail, where officers book in and do their reports, from 2:21 p.m. until about 9:03 p.m.?
That's correct.
Okay. What is the next item?
At 8:47 p.m., Botham Jean leaves his home. We have a door event and car data supporting that.
Okay. So Mr. Jean has come home at about 4:56 in the afternoon, and he's now, at least according to the data, his vehicle's back in motion, and there's a door event which shows that he left and locked, presumably he left and locked his door.
Now or at 5?
No, at 8:47.
Yes, at 8:47, he's exited his home and is in his car.
Okay. And then, all right, what's next?
At 9:14, Martin Rivera sends a Snapchat to the defendant.
Okay, again, same line of question. Were we able to recover what that particular image was?
We were not.
All right, what happened next?
At 9:17, the defendant arrives at the Southeast substation.
All right. So after leaving the jail, the defendant and the remaining members of her CRT team went to their substation and arrived at approximately 9:17 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay, next.
At 9:26, the defendant docks her body cam at the Southeast station.
Okay, and then what happens after that?
From 9:27 to 9:33, the defendant and Martin Rivera send multiple texts, MMS, and Snapchats to each other.
Okay, so that's going to be for a 6-minute block of time. There were several of all kinds of media interactions between the defendant and Mr. Rivera?
That's correct.
Okay, and then what happened at 9:29?
At 9:29, the defendant sends a Snapchat response, "Wanna touch."
Okay, and then?
At 9:33, the defendant sends a text message, "Barely walking out."
Okay,
And these are to Martin Rivera.
okay, and then what happened next?
At 9:27 and 9:28, we see Botham Jean arriving to Southside Flats on their digital video recorder.
Okay, so Mr. Jean is arriving back to his apartment complex just a few minutes before the defendant is leaving the Southeast substation.
Yes.
Okay, what happened next?
At 9:34, we have a door event at apartment 1478, Botham Jean's apartment. At 9:37, the defendant receives a phone call from her partner, Martin Rivera.
Okay, and that is going to last until 9:55:21?
That's correct.
All right. And let me just ask this, if we already know from the data that she is at the Southeast substation at 9:34, and we know what time she arrives at the Southside Flats based on the data from their video recording system being about 9:46, most of this, or it looks like at least half of the conversation between her and Martin Rivera occurs while she's driving home.
Approximately, yes.
Okay, is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
All right. And then does that conversation, after she's entered into the parking garage, continue then for another 7-8 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, what happened next?
At 9:53 and 9:54, we see Ronald Jones turning into the carport at Southside Flats on channel 15 and channel 10 of their digital video recorder.
Okay.
At 9:59, a 911 call is placed by the defendant.
Okay, so sometime between 9:55:21 then, and 9:59, I believe it's 06, is that when, the exact time when the call was made from?
9:59:10, I believe, is what the 911 call records show.
Okay, so it's going to be in that 3 minutes and 40-some seconds. There's a 3 minute and 40-some second gap between the end of the call with Martin Rivera and the incoming call at Dallas Police Department to the 911 system.
Yes.
Okay. What happened next?
At 10:01:18, DPD Sergeant Brianna Valentine arrives at Southside Flats. At 10:02:06, DPD Officer Michael Lee is one of the first responding officers, and they arrive at Southside Flats. At 10:02:25, the defendant texts Martin Rivera, "I need you, hurry."
This is going to again be during the pendency of the ongoing 911 call.
This is during the 911 call. At 10:03:03, the defendant texts Martin Rivera again and says, "I fucked up."
Right. Also during the 911 call.
Yes. At 10:04:39, we can see DPD Lee's body camera showing Officer Blair reaching the defendant outside of 1478. At 10:04:47, the defendant, Blair, and Lee enter apartment 1478.
Okay.
At 10:05:08, Guyger leaves the apartment, which is 1478.
Okay.
At 10:05:26, Lee and Blair start CPR on Botham Jean.
All right.
At 10:10:12, Dallas Fire Rescue enters the apartment 1478.
Okay.
At 10:12:03, Dallas Fire Rescue leaves the apartment with Botham Jean. At 10:16:12, we can see Sergeant Valentine on her in-car camera moving her squad car underneath the carport at Southside Flats.
Is that where we see her pulling up? Have you seen that video?
Yes.
Are you speaking of the video where she's pulling up and the defendant is speaking to numerous people under the car?
I don't recall seeing the defendant speaking to anyone, but yes, she pulls her car from the street under the carport.
Thank you.
May I approach?
Yes.
Ms. Noble? So you're based all this information on your extraction of the data, correct?
It's not my extraction of the data, it's the data that was available to me, yes.
You're looking at the data that was available to you,
Correct.
and you're not testifying as to the reliability or accuracy of the data?
In reference to what part?
Well, I'm just... The way you're looking at this case, the door event at apartment 1478 means either locking or unlocking of the door, correct?
I believe that's correct.
And a engine starting or the car starting is someone starting the car, correct?
That's correct.
And so, do you know why Mr. John was able to start his car prior to leaving his apartment?
I have an explanation for that, yes.
Is there something on the data that explains that?
Mr. Hermes went over that some times are set by a person, and if they're set wrong initially, they're going to maintain that incorrect time. So in this instance, the door lock was the thing that was likely inaccurate because it had a year of 2012 and the apartments were not built in 2012. So we can assume that it meant 2018 and not 2012. And the time was off by approximately an hour from the records, and we know that because we have the door event and then just within minutes the car starting. So that's a logical explanation that he locked his door, walked to his car, and his car started.
So he locked his door at what time?
The exact time isn't known, but on the records, it shows
My question is, what time did he lock his door?
the exact time I cannot tell you.
So you're confident he started his car at 8:15?
Based on the records, yes.
So you're sure of that, but you're telling us the log audit, you're not sure about?
So part of the process is taking known times. So things that I could find answers to if the time was accurate, I did. And the GPS data in his car was accurate. It's set by GPS. It's set by satellites in the sky. The thing that I couldn't ascertain for sure was when, how the lock data was set, like who set that time and how that time was made. So part of validating the unknown times is relying on the times that are known.
And you don't know what time he locked his door, correct?
The precise time, that's correct, I don't know.
Nothing further.
Is there a redirect?
No, ma'am.
May she be excused.
No objection.
No objection from the state judge.
There, thank you very much, Ms. Noebel. We'll call you next week. Or rather, who is your next witness?
Ms. Long is fixing to tell me, Judge.
State House Taydra Jones.
And Ms. Jones, if you would, please raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Jones, state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Taydra Jones, Jones.
And your first name, I'm sorry.
Taydra, Taydra.
And Ms. Jones, where do you work?
I work at Tracy Locke.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a project manager at an advertising agency.
And back on September the 6th of 2018, did you reside at the Southside Flats on Lamar?
Yes,
Okay. How long had you been living here?
since the end of April.
April of 2018?
Yes,
And what was your apartment number?
1482.
And I want to take your attention to the evening hours of that night. Actually, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Ms. Jones, I'm showing you an exhibit that's been admitted as 34B as in Bravo. Do you see your apartment location on this?
Yes.
And could you show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury where your apartment is located?
Right here.
Okay. So I'm going to take your name and stick it here. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Ms. Jones, do you recall what time you arrived home that evening?
I do not recall the specific time I arrived home.
Do you know what your plans were for the night?
To watch TV and go to sleep.
Okay. At some point, did you hear what I guess you recognized as gunshots?
Yes.
Okay. What were you doing when those shots started?
I was sitting on the couch watching television.
Were you in your living room or your bedroom?
My living room.
Before the shots, did you hear any noise or any commotion?
No.
So tell us about what actually happened. You were watching TV and then what?
I was on the couch watching TV. I was also on the phone with my cousin. And excuse me, I wasn't on the phone yet. I heard the gunshots, or what I thought was gunshots. I wasn't sure at the moment. So then I called my cousin. And then I heard the police sirens, and I saw them from like the balcony, because it faces the street a little bit. And so that's when I verified that it was gunshots. And yeah.
How many gunshots do you recall hearing?
2.
And were they slow or fast in succession? Like did the gunshots happen fast, one behind the other, or was it?
One behind the other.
Okay. Was it like pow, long pause pow, or pow pow?
It was like pow, pow.
Okay. And you said that you heard the sirens. Was the sirens, was it immediately or?
Like a couple minutes after.
You said you called your cousin. Why did you call your cousin?
She's like a sister to me. I don't know. I heard gunshots and called her and was like, I'm here. I heard gunshots, so.
Had you ever heard gunshots before?
At my apartment?
Just
in general, yes.
Okay, so you recognized what they were when they occurred?
Yes.
And you said you didn't hear anything prior to?
No.
Did you know your neighbors on the walkway of that 4th floor?
I've seen people. I didn't know people personally or know their names, but you see people regularly when you go to and from your apartment.
So you heard the sirens and you kind of looked out your balcony. When you looked out your balcony, did you see, I guess, police trying to get inside?
I saw police cars driving down the street and stopping at the apartment.
And at some point, did you ever see a female on the walkway of the 4th floor?
Yes.
Okay, and what was that female dressed like?
The police officer.
Can you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what she was doing?
She was walking kind of panicked down the hallway, looked a little red. She was on the phone, I believe, and that was it, yeah.
Did you hear anything that she was saying while she was on the phone?
No. I mean, I heard her talking, but I don't know what she was saying.
Had you ever seen her before?
No, not to my knowledge.
And at some point, did you see paramedics arrive?
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. When you saw the officer run on the phone, were you looking out your peephole or were you looking out your balcony?
I was looking at my peephole of my door.
Did you ever open your door?
I opened my door slightly. She was with another officer who was kind of like, it's okay. Because I was just, when I saw the police, I hoped that it would be safe and wanted to know what was happening. And he just said it was okay, and I just closed my door again.
Did you later see paramedics arrive?
Yes.
And you're doing all this observing through your peephole?
Yes.
Are you still on the phone with your cousin?
She didn't answer.
Okay.
She answered the first time, and then she hung up, and then she didn't answer again.
And when the paramedics arrived, what did you observe?
I just saw them go down the hallway.
And they were moving
Towards-
pretty quickly?
Yes, towards the door.
When you say towards the door, apartment 1478?
I don't know his apartment number.
Okay. Had you ever seen both of them before in the apartment complex?
Yes.
Had you ever had any interactions with him?
Just like the neighbor smiled and nod.
From your time there, are the hallways at the Southside Flats, does noise echo pretty loud in that hallway?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity maybe hear like some of your neighbors on the inside of their apartments when you're walking down the hallways?
If they're loud enough.
Okay. And so you're saying that before you heard the gunshots, you hadn't heard any sounds being made?
No.
Okay. No loud commands being given?
No.
That's it.
Hello, Ms. Jones. I'm John Stocker. Do you remember speaking to some investigating officers on the night of September 6th
Yes.
last year? And so you were asked about what you heard, and before you heard what you didn't immediately recognize as gunfire, you were watching television, correctly?
Yes.
Correct? And you had this volume turned up rather loud, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And were you, at that moment, before the gunfire that you heard, were you focusing on listening to outside the apartment?
No, I was watching television.
And you kind of described, you remember describing to the investigating officers, you were kind of in your own little, I guess in your own little world at that time, watching television, you had it turned up pretty loud, correct?
Yes.
And when they asked you if you'd seen anyone through the peephole, did you report to them that you'd seen a civilian outside?
I don't remember.
That's the witness. Thank you.
Is there redirect? No. This should be excused.
She came from the state.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. You're excused.
Thank you.
I think we'll take our lunch break at this time. And we'll resume at 1 o'clock.
All rise.